Welcome back to The Rebel's Edge, where we break down the 50 basis point cut that the Fed gave us yesterday and what it's doing to the market, and in particular, Bitcoin, as we discussed, right here on The Rebel's Edge. Bang! All right.
He's got it. I don't know if you've been updating what episode it is or not. Okay,
No,
I was going to say.
No, because I want to surprise people as we get close to 400.
Which is very close to the Nebraska sellout, which is 400 consecutive sellouts at their stadium, John, for the football. So, and it ain't like it's 40,000. We're talking 92,000 people, 400 consecutive. Pretty amazing.
Multiply 400 times 90 some odd thousand folks, and it's a real number.
Yes, it is.
But welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. We did indeed get a 50 basis point cut. I was not calling for that. I thought we would get 25. So diving into the macro minute, Pete, I'm going to say that their decision to cut by 50 basis points, yeah, that significantly impacted markets. Although we sold off yesterday, the NASDAQ and S&P are rocking today. And it marks a shift in monetary policy, as we've said, 4 years since the last time they cut, Pete.
Yep, and they made this cut. And I think that as we got a little bit closer, we both were probably looking at that 50 thinking, it's more possible. It's a possibility. Why would they do that? And is that going to send the wrong message? It didn't send the wrong message. And I think, John, in my opinion, because of the fact that how good of a job Powell did up there on that podium and how he answered the questions, I think put people into a lot of relief. Now, we were up and then we sold off and everything else, but look at the follow through today. We're up 500 points across the Dow and the NASDAQ and screaming up 100 points on the S&P. I think all of that has to do with a lot of the folks that are now catching up. So did they do 50? The one thing I'll warn everybody about is this. Powell was very clear again, which he's been clear each and every time that he's spoken to us. But I think specifically saying, hey, look, don't get used to 50. We are still going to go through all the data as we have, and they're going all the way out to November. That's when we're going to find out, because there is a lot to this decision that goes there. It's not just Jerome Powell saying, hey, we're doing 50, end of story. I think that 25, 50, some people say 75. I think that would be really a reach, quite frankly. But I think 25 and 50 will be the debated topics for the next couple months.
Absolutely, they will, Pete. And drifting into fantastic futures, I am going to say, Pete, that pat ourselves on the back. We said Bitcoin would move and move a lot on such a move because it's a non-yield instrument.
Yeah.
Yes, there are ways that Pete and I could show you how to turn it into a yield, but as it sits, it is not. But Bitcoin is up 6% today, Pete. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say, yeah, that's my fantastic future for the day, Bitcoin.
Yep, great one. And you made a great call on that one, John. By the way, crude. You know, we talk about it all the time, some of the moves. Basically, in the last week, we've gone from 65 to 72. That's a pretty strong move in a very short period of time. We began 2024 at $70 in crude. Where were we today in the morning? Well, about 71. We popped up over 72, pulled back. April, we were 86. July, we were 84. Shows you some of the movements that we've had out of crude. So the fact that we're up at 71, 72, somewhere in there could be more room to the upside. And I will tell you this, the UOA, unusual option activity that we've had in our services here at Market Rebellion, they were buying calls across the board, and they were right. This is a really, really nice move from crude.
It is, Pete. And, it was going down because they were worried about global growth. Well, the Fed just kicked the market in the backside to get that global growth restarted, at least a little, and truly within our borders, it should do that. It should also shake to the rest of the world, Pete, but we'll keep a close eye on that. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about stocks, starting with Darden Restaurants. Yeah. Why? Well, they reported first quarter sales, and those sales missed badly. 175 a share versus 183 was what the bottom line number was. The sales numbers were, 2.76 billion versus 2.73, so slightly better. But then, Pete, they had an announcement on a deal with Uber, and that appears to be what is lifting shares today.
Yeah, this is a company that's actually navigated extremely well through the pandemic and everything else and coming out of the pandemic, and they continue to do well. And this particular deal, this Uber deal, this partnership that they've got, people seem to be pretty daggone excited about this, John. Maybe they should be, maybe not. I don't really know the answer to that, but this is a stock that jumped all the way up. It got as high as 173. 176 is the 52-week highs, so it's pressing right up against there right now, John. Let's call it about a 10% move to the upside. Pretty damn nice, near that 52-week high, as I said. I'll tell you what, this is all about this Uber partnership because, as you said, if you look at the earnings, well, not so great. You look at the sales, about in line, let's call it, maybe a slight beat, but about in line. So this really was about what's going on with Uber and the potential that could bring into DRI.
Yeah, it's definitely responsible for a little pop in that stock today that's not part of the 50 basis point cut. Well, Pete, Mobileye, MBLY, you had this one because you were smart enough, I missed it, you were smart enough to follow the unusual option activity. Unusual options, folks? Yeah, because 6,900 options, that's 690,000 shares of stock equivalent. Every option is for 100 shares of stock. So when they're buying the September 12 calls, gives them the right to take stock from somebody right at the money, at 12, where it was trading. Well, it went up rather nicely on the news that Intel is not going to be divesting itself of its ownership shares of Mobileye, MBLY. So look at that spike on the graph there. That is because Intel's going to hold rather than say sold.
Yep. And John, not only did they do that, they're actually coming after more, and they're looking for more to the upside, potentially. I mean, so we'll keep an eye on that. I'm not going to give you all the numbers. We've given you way too much already this week for free. But I will tell you there's more rolls to the upside, and we will keep an eye on that. We'll keep you updated on that. This whole Intel thing, John, I think it's impressive because of the fact that they have been committed. They're continuing to be committed. That was something that was being called in question to some degree. How about this? Last Friday, the stock was trading $10. Today, it's trading close to $13.50 to almost $14. A really nice move. And when you look at the pristine balance sheet that they got free cash flow of $240 million. They've got cash to debt of $1.2 billion. This is a really well-oiled machine, and I think Intel is very smart to want to stay with them for a while longer.
Yeah, I think a lot of people questioned the move when they made the investment, Pete, but now it seems to be setting itself up pretty well.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at some of the crypto-related stocks. You could take a look at Coinbase, you could take a look at Mara, Riot Blockchain, but I'll say MicroStrategy, Pete, because the enterprise software company isn't really about enterprise software. It's about, 244,000 Bitcoins. That is some massive ownership, my friends. And the stock opened at 140, Pete, and it has just gone boop, boop, boop. Michael Saylor's stock is now trading, I think, 146, 147. So that is a massive jump for MicroStrategy. Keep in mind, of course, they did a stock split not long ago.
And by the way, the average price for Michael Saylor, and people can throw rocks at him all they want. As a matter of fact, if I'm Saylor, I'd go, bring it on, baby. I mean, his average, John, is under 39,000 for Bitcoin right now. Today, it's trading as much as 64,000. I don't know where it is this moment, but as you mentioned, when you add to it and you've got 244,000 Bitcoin, I would say you're doing something pretty right, and you've done something pretty right for quite a while. The only bigger holder right now is BlackRock, who's got a pretty decent number, but Saylor and MicroStrategy, they've got $14 billion worth, John, of Bitcoin. So I would say they're doing a lot of things right, and he continues to be that guy who invests in what he thinks is the right thing. And boy, is that done well for MicroStrategy.
Yep. If you're a shareholder there, folks, take a look at what a $10,000 investment in MicroStrategy would have yielded over the last decade. Kind of makes Warren Buffett's stock look a little pedestrian, old Berkshire Hathaway. All right, Pete, let's talk one more stock before we turn it over to sports and say Progyny. That's PGNY. Now, Jump Securities downgraded them from outperform to market perform. And why did they do that? Well, the loss of a very large client. And this single client, Pete, apparently represents some 670,000 members. That's a big number. That's a big client. They didn't name who the client was, Pete, but the fact that they're losing that client is causing this stock to hemorrhage value throughout the day.
Oh, yeah. Hemorrhage is not even the right. I don't know what you'd want to say. Bleeding out.
Yeah.
How about bleeding out? I mean, these guys are getting the crap kicked out. It's at a 52-week low. The range is anywhere between, call it close to 14 and 42. It was underneath 14 today. And John, talk about volumes. That was 10x in the first couple hours of the day of volume for a normal full day. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of people are definitely running right now for the exits. And is it the right thing to do? Well, maybe this particular client is 10 to 12% of the entire company. They normally, John, have been able to hold on to clients at a level of 100%. So the fact that they're losing somebody and somebody pretty big, I'd say that is something that's elevating the concerns right now for a lot of people. And that's why people are just running for the doors. Is it the right thing to do? Maybe. It might be a bit of an overreaction, but at the same time, you've got to deal with what you've got. I would not want to try to bottom fish this thing right now. I think you'd want to be patient to keep an eye on this one. And if they're able to turn to some degree back to the upside, this is a stock that has plenty of room to run if they can make that turn.
Yeah. The recent high, folks, is more like 41, 42 bucks a share. So like Pete said, getting down today to as low as breaking through 14, that's pretty darn ugly. All right. Well, Pete, I can't wait for the sports. So let us know what you got today.
All right. Big weekend. And I thought we'd have a little bit of fun with what are the three best games out of the three biggest of the different conferences that are out there. So first one, it actually is not over the weekend, John. It's Friday and Friday night. 400 consecutive sellouts, as we said, Nebraska. Number 24, Illinois. By the way, they're 3-0. Their quarterback has been lighting things up. They really look good. This is a coach, Bielema, that a lot of people don't like him because he's colorful. He can be abrasive. He can do all those types of things. I really like the guy. If I was playing football right now, that would be one of the coaches that I would love to play for because I like the way he motivates his team and how he recruits and all that type of thing. I think it's pretty impressive. But it's going to be at Lincoln. It's going to be a night game. We already saw a night game a while ago against Colorado, and that one went pretty well for Nebraska. The black shirts might be back. It might be a little early to call that, but Shedeur was able to throw on Nebraska pretty well. They held him out of the end zone pretty well as well. So I think that game should be great. I also look at Big 12, John. You've got Utah against Oklahoma State, number 12 against number 14. Utah's got a great defense. Oklahoma State has a great offense. We'll see who ends up winning that one. That should be a good battle in the Big 12. And then the SEC. How about number 6, Tennessee? These guys are, it's like a pinball machine, John, the way they score points. It just goes on and on against Oklahoma, at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, in my opinion, has not played great yet this year. And all my buddies love their defense. So I'm going to say, if you've got the top 5 offense and a top 5 defense over there with Tennessee, that's going to be a tough opponent. We'll have to see. I mean, this time of year, you look at what people have done and you say, well, wait a minute now. That was against, a pretty inferior, team or school or whatever. I would say this, Tennessee is for real. We'll find out this weekend against Oklahoma.
Yeah, and Nico, the quarterback at Oklahoma, Pete, that kid's making a name for himself.
Mhm.
So we will certainly be talking about him, I think, next week when we review that Tennessee-Oklahoma game. All right, next one, Pete. You've got the biggest game of the week in the NFL. What is it?
There's only one. There's only one game that really matters. I'm not kidding. You look through it and you're like, a bunch of boring looking games. It's not, it doesn't look anything sexy except for one. Houston. Houston is coming to Minnesota. And why is that such an important one? Well, CJ Stroud has turned out to be a hell of a lot better than not only Bryce Young, but a lot of quarterbacks that are out there. And this kid, what he did in 1 year and the rest of the draft picks that they got, but they changed this team from a loser into a winner pretty damn fast down there in Houston. So I think them coming up here to Minnesota to play in the stadium right over there, US Bank, that's going to be big because everybody's saying Sam Darnold is the second coming of Fran Tarkington, I guess, John. So I'm not really sure how to read this whole thing. He's played pretty well, but I'll tell you what, CJ Stroud still got no interceptions, throws touchdowns, has a great running game, and they got one hell of a defense. And they got Danielle Hunter, a former Viking for many years, fastest man to get 50 sacks in his career, and he's now down there. This should be a pretty interesting game.
Well, and the Vikings finally look like they have a defense, even though, as you say, they lost Darius. I mean, still, the defense looks stout this year, Pete.
Yep.
Against San Francisco, they had a lot of guys in the lanes, which made it difficult, even though Purdy didn't have a horrible game, made it difficult for him to put the ball where he wanted to because they actually had some D-backs that looked like they wanted to play, which is rare for the Vikes. Now, Houston is giving 2.5 at Minnesota, Pete. Now, that kind of seems like a trap to me. Now, I know, and some people might say, well, John, Darnold had a 97-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson that really kind of, it wasn't the nail in the coffin, but it certainly hurt because when you got the Vikings down on their own 3-yard line and Darnold's throwing from deep in the end zone, what are the odds, even throwing to Justin Jefferson, that you're going to be able to get that kind of a play? And obviously the biggest, probably the biggest, Pete, fantasy football point score of the year for that one. But I think that if everybody's healthy, giving 2.5 to the Vikings playing in Minnesota, I like the Vikings. So I'll be taking the Vikes in this one, Pete. And if they get turnovers, that stadium is going to get loud. And it's one of those places, folks, if you haven't been there, when it's glass, basically. So the sound reverberates pretty big time within their dome, if you want to call it a dome. It's really a building, but it's pretty cool. And I think the Texans, even though they're used to playing indoors, Pete, will get a little test of their mettle against that crowd noise in Minnesota.
Yep, and CJ Stroud, the guy's a big, strong, great quarterback. I'm really excited to see this one, John. And by the way, we took 2 players from them on our defense that they no longer have, of course. You got Cashman is one of the guys for sure, and then Grenard. And both of them, last week, Cashman had an incredible game. He's right here from Minneapolis. He played at the University of Minnesota, got drafted by the Giants, went to Houston, and the kid is making bank because he's a hell of a linebacker. So fun kid to watch play. Should be a great game. I'm going to tell you this. I'm taking Houston. So you and I are on opposite sides of this one, but it should be fun.
Now, let me ask you this, Pete. I know that you held the Big Ten tackling record and the University of Minnesota tackling record. Cashman wasn't the one that broke it, was he?
No.
Did he ever get up to your numbers?
No. He had good numbers, but, I was pretty fortunate, John. I mean, I was playing and it was, it was a great time and I had some good years. My best year, I think I had 154 tackles or something like that. So it was a lot, but my body, that's why I've got this silly thing on my elbow. I got an operation on it like 5 weeks ago. So you pay for what you love, and sometimes the pay is something that you don't really enjoy. I had my knee operated on 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I got my elbow operated on 5 weeks ago. So whenever somebody says football players are overpaid, I'm like, look, you have no idea.
Well, I'm going to be going up to Wisconsin, Pete, and getting some stem cells from a doc that I know up there. First, I have to have, the stem cells pulled out and then enhanced, and then they're going to put them back in. So I'm going to get that shoulder and the opposite knee. And this shoulder is a hockey injury, and the opposite knee is a skiing injury. So, of course, I didn't play 6 years in the NFL like Pete. Played 4 games. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. We really appreciate it. Make sure you do check out the Mastermind tickets. We still have some. I know it's incredible, but we still have some. You can go to marketrebellion.com/mastermind. You can also scan that barcode. It'll take you to, or that QR code. It'll take you to the same spot. Or if you're somebody who likes to talk to people, some of us still do, you can dial 888-809-8058. That's 888-809-8058. You could be there watching us trade live with some of the best traders in the country, people that have been doing it for a combined, 200 years. You want to be with some people like that, learning some tricks of the trade? Join us October 11th, Aventura, Florida. Have a nice night, everybody. We'll see you Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.